All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be as you sit and consume this video. My name's Craig Finley. I'm one of the IR gurus here. And today we're going to cover the MSSP architecture and installation overview. Now, we want to start by defining what an MSSP is. So, MSSP is a managed security service provider. It's an information technology service provider that sells security services to businesses, right? So, when we are taking the source software and deploying it in this format, we will be managing that portion of the detection and response process. Now, of course, here we are specifically concentrated on the SOAR. So we are looking at how, after the detection comes, how can we set it up where we can evaluate, see the incidents that are going to be cases that need to be worked on, and how we could do this for client, or let's go ahead and just start to use the terms now, child orgs, right? Um, Typically, a lot of times you'll hear domains there, but in our particular solution, everything is divided into an org. Org is the boundary of permissions and control. So we're going to use the term org here. So we're going to do this for many different child orgs for the different clients that we are attempting to service, right? So what does this look like? Well, we start off with a picture of the architecture so that we can understand it. So the first org that we're going to define here in the setup is we're going to create a configuration org. And the configuration org is pretty much a boundary of all the controls, the permissions, any objects, any playbooks, any users or groups, anything that's going to be defined in this top level organization. And then it'll feed down into the subsequent lower organizations. So we start off with this base critical first one, the configuration org. This is also the place where we're going to be able to push any information to the children that come under it, right? So here we go. The next one we're going to define here is the dashboard org, all right? Dashboard, pretty much self-explanatory, is for any dashboards or reporting, so you can see aggregate statistics of something that has occurred on any other child org that you have beneath that, right? Often we refer to this in the commentary, sometimes in the forums and stuff. You'll see it talk about as a config and dashboard domains, right? They are two separate orgs that are created there. I said domains when I meant to say orgs, but you get the idea. So there are two separate ones there, but when we're talking about this top level administration of what the provider does, that the subscribers, the end users there of the business service, sometimes we refer to those as a singular thing, but they are actually two different ones, right? So we define the configuration org, we define the dashboard org, and the next step is to define all of the child orgs. So in our example here today, we're going to go through, we're going to define 3 child orgs. There'll be a child A, child B, and a child C. We're actually going to stick with those names for simplicity. Now, once these orgs are all set up there, our next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create our master administrator, right? Our top level administration account. And we're going to create it here at the configuration first, and then we're going to apply that account to each one of these orgs, right? So we use a command called resutil to use it, right? So we start out with resutil, create org configuration, create org dashboard, right? And we add switches to the end of it. So when you get down here, that's going to be resutil, going to create an org, and this type is going to be a child, right? So we add on additional switches there to kind of get us to where we need to be with what we're setting up there. Now, once we've set up that architecture and we have that user account created and able to assess each one of those child orgs, the next thing we do is we're going to go and set up group memberships, settings, layouts, playbooks. All of those things as individual activities are kind of like covered in other videos. So we don't want to spend a lot of time here. We took time and decided that it would be best to make this one later in the series so that all of those other preliminary topics would be covered in other video resources that you have available to you. So at the top level, the configuration, we're going to create these groups. We're going to create these settings, these layouts, these playbooks, and all of these different objects that can be used by our children, right? We're going to do this at the top level, and then when we do this thing called push configuration changes. When we push those configuration changes, they come down to the children. which means that something that you define at the top may be used exclusively for child A, but it will be pushed to the child B org or to the child C org, right? So we'll be able to effectively limit what child B and C does by permissions on the actual objects, right? And all of that is in that configuration domain. So once that's completed, everything is set up. We have our architecture all laid out there. We save the changes to the configuration org, and then we push these changes down to the child org. Once we have that base set up, all set up and laid out for us, next thing we want to do is invite the users, right? So we're going to send the individual users for each one of those domains a link from the configuration. Now, in this case, in this example, in this graphic, we have a initial user there. His name is John Smith, right? So John Smith was our master administrator. We created that account, res-util create new user, applied it to the configuration, applied it to the child A, B, and C. If we were to convert those other accounts, they would basically have that master administrator permission. That's not what we want, right? What we want them is to be a subscriber to our managed service. Therefore, from the configuration org, we're going to send them an invitation. And when that invitation goes out and is received by that user, the user will receive an email. Okay, so in our example here, the back end, the configuration for the email to go out to that particular user, all of that's been kind of like pre-configured. But that email invite is going to go out to a particular user, and then they're going to come down and they're going to connect through that link to the orgs, right? So they're going to pretty much sign in to the configuration where it was created, but they're also going to be made a member of their child org. So in the first one that we have here, for child A, we have Alice. For child B, we have Bob. For child C, we have Carol, right? You remember Alice and Bob from all your cryptology studying and stuff. So we're going to use those names here just to keep it simple. So they're going to find that as we get ready to send that invitation out, Alice will be a member of configuration, and Alice will also be a member of child A. Bob will be a member of configuration and a member of child B. So with that said, let's get into it. All right, so before we begin here, we're connected to our instance. I think the first thing that we should do sudo res-util, and I'm going to pipe that out to less, because I want to go over a couple of things that we can do here with the command. All right, so down here at the bottom of the screen here, you see we have new org. We're going to do sudo res-util new org, right? So we're saying that we are creating a new org here within our system. And when we come down a little bit more from the new org, we see that we have additional switches that we can use there for a few things here. So what's going to be important to us in today's video is we're going to do the config type. We have valid values of standard, global dashboard, configuration, and child, right? So if you're doing a regular install, it's not the MSSP variant. You know, if you looked at the installation and you've done the installation before, you're doing a standard install, right? So the architecture that we just talked about, it doesn't exist, all right? So any other video will apply to the configuration of objects that can be used in any of these, but standard is the default, all right? And it is a regular install. Now, as we just laid it out for you on the config type, the first one we will do will be the configuration. Then we will do the global dashboard, and then we will set up our child names. Now, when we set this up and we specify configuration, we're pretty much, that is the start of us saying that we are doing the MSSP install, right? It's just that simple to kick it off and get it moved forward. So we're going to go with this configuration, then the global dashboard, and then child. What's really interesting or really cool here is we have the incident sequence code prefix. This will apply to all 4 variants that you could do. But if you chose to, you could actually set up a prefix um, for the child in standard organization. So it would be a maximum of 10 characters where you could say, hey, let's say for child A, I wanted to put the name of my company uh, as the service provider underscore child A as the name. Well, as long as it's within 10 characters, I could do that, right? So I could put some sort of little code there, and that would be a prefix or a means of telling me what's special or what's different about this particular organization. The next option I have there is the incident sequence code start index. So I can actually add a start number there for the incidents, right? Child A could be 2,000, child 3 could be 4,000, child C could be 6,000. But the combination of the index number and the prefix makes them unique for each one of the child domains. The configuration domain will also have this, and you'll see that very shortly as we go and start to create those. So this is also annotated there in the notes for you, but I just wanted to kind of like point that out, that if this is a point of additional customization that you would like within your setup, then it is completely possible. So that might be something you want to take a look at, understand, and plan it out if you are setting this up for companies or customers. Now, also understand that all of these orgs are being created on the same machine. So when you do an update or something like that to any version or apply hot fixes, it is affecting everything or everyone that is a child of that. So here we are entering the first command, sudo res util new org. The name is MSSP config. So our configuration type is configuration, right? So this is our top level domain. Once we have that one completed, our next step will be to create the dashboard. And the interesting thing about setting up the dashboard, when we set up the dashboard, what's a little bit different about that command is the dashboard. We also specify the parent org. So our parent org, our dashboard, is going to be tied back to MSSP config. As that command completed, you see we have an incident sequence code prefix and a starting index, right? So those are, because we didn't specify those with switches, they were auto-generated, which is fine for our activities today. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter here, and we're going to go ahead and kick off the dashboard. And while we are waiting for the dashboard domain to complete, we're going to prep the command here for child A. All right. So you see here we are creating child A. Again, its config type now has changed to child, and its parent org is the dashboard domain. So that's where we get its dashboards and its reporting. Gonna hit enter. This is really cool because I'm getting all this done with one sudo password. This organization also will be created with a random generated. I'm just going to go back here and backspace and make this a B. B is now created, and let's do that one more time for child C. All right, now that all of the domains are created, next step here will be to create my account. Now, again, creating the account from the CLI is pretty much going to give me that master administrator or the top level of permissions. So what's different here is we're doing res util instead of new org. We're using new user. Here's my email address, cfan@irgurus.com. That domain doesn't actually exist. We're just using it here for testing. So there's my name and our org. We're going to create this in the MSSP config domain. All right. Hit enter. We'll get that done. And now we have to put in a password for this user. Requires about a 15-character password. That's part of the standard complexity requirements here. So I'm going to put something simple there that I can actually remember. All right, so that's done there for the MSSP config. Now we want to switch this over. Dashboard. And the reason that we need to have this permission here to do this master administrator on all of these orgs, these child orgs and the dashboard org, they are subscribing to this push and change, right? So if you omit this and you don't do this particular step here, you won't be able to push to those child orgs, okay? Another thing there, you know, because the user already exists in the configuration, as primary user account, we're not creating the user account again. It's just identifying it and applying to the other. So it's not prompting me for the passwords anymore, right? So let's go ahead and finish this up. We've got child _A. Okay, this command will actually go through and check and make sure that these orgs do exist. And, you know, I don't have the switch on there where we are creating an org, or we didn't use new org. So if that wasn't successful, it would error out. And here we go with B. And when that completes, we'll do it one more time for C. All right. So now with all of that all set up, we are now in a position to actually log on to this interface. So let me bring up a window here, and my instance is hosted at 192.168.2.180. And there it is. Oh, that was a quick flip-flop there. I had already kind of like pre-populated my password manager, so it's a wonderful thing. I'm already connected. I'm already in the system here. So you see that I'm here. I am a master administrator and just logged in. So the next step would be setting up a lot of things. If I was a managed service provider, I could be possibly having playbooks that are going to be used. I could have all types of scripts that could be used, functions, settings. I could be creating customized layouts, many of the things that are covered in the other videos, right? We've got this standard view here of administrator settings and customization settings. And we're currently in administrator settings. Because my account is a member of multiple domains, multiple organizations, I'm able to move to each one of those organizations and create or fix up anything that needed to be used, right? So one of the things that we like to do here, again, saying that all of our user accounts are going to also be a member of this configuration, because their objects, their assets, and their permissions and things like that will be propagated through whenever we do a configuration push that's located here. It would be wise for us to go and set up groups, right? So we're going to create some groups here. I'm just going to keep it simple. It's going to be client A SOC 1 And actually, I'll go back to site 1. I'll allow incident ownership. All right. Do the same for client B. And once more for client C. So it's at this point that you could actually be doing all types of different customizations that you would want to do for any of your different things there, layouts, applications, pairing app hosts to the individual domains, and things like that, setting up pairing key. Each child domain would have its own app host, etc. A lot of different things would go in there. Now, there are a few limitations when you are using the MSSP variant. There will be a link in the bottom of our annotation for this video that will cover those for you. Don't want to kind of like walk into that rabbit hole of going down it, but pretty much stay here on the course of what we've discussed so far as the architecture. So in this case, we have set up these groups. Next thing we want to do is configuration push. We're going to do a push configuration, version description, initial config push, and we added some groups. All right, so we're going to push that out. That's going to go down to the subdomains there. As you can see, we get this little table here of what's in progress. And it will show that it is pushing that configuration to each one of those orgs. So we basically want to wait until we see that all 4 of those are successful. Once it is successful, we will be able to move forward there. All right, so all 4 are complete. We're going to hit close. I should point out here that anything that you set up there in that configuration, you can kind of like download it and save it off to the side if you like. We could just click this button here, and the MSSP config, or the name of the org, will be downloaded as a res file. All right, so our next step here, back to what we detailed on the video, is we need to get our users in here. So now it's time to invite some users. So we're going to click invite user here, and we're going to put in the email. Email is Alice, not Atlas. Alice at irgurus.com. In groups, we're going to put Alice in client A SOC user. And as you see here, we're inviting from the MSSP config organization, so it is imperative, or it is mandatory, that one's there. You don't see a little X for me to take it out. And now I have the ability to add child A. So when Alex gets that email invitation and they set up their account, they will be subscribed directly to this particular domain. So we're going to send that out for Alice. We're going to do it again for Bob. Bob at irgurus.com, and he's going to go to client B as his group, and he's going to go to child B as his org, and we'll send that invitation. And we have one more user here, and that user is Carol at Carol's going to go to client C and org C. And that invitations are now sent. So we have pending invites for each one of those users. When those users actually go through and check their mail, they'll be able to move forward with enrolling themselves in the system for the process, right? Okay. So our next step, now that we have those invitations sent out, is to move over to a client workstation here. So we're going to put in our password, and we see that we have an email invitation here for Alice and Bob. Let's just hit send and receive. Ah, there's the one for Carol. All right, good deal. So we're going to click on the invitation here for Alice, and we see that we have a link here. This link will take us to the actual invitation page. So we're going to click that there, and we're going to hope Firefox pops up on us in the background here. Open that link there in Firefox. Let's make this full screen. So the first name here is going to be Alice. IR Guru. SOC member. Child A. Phone number. Well, I'm from the 404. 867-5309. Yeah, that would be a good number there. It's actually Jenny's number, but that's okay. And for the password, we give a password here. Again, 15 characters. Let's go with let's go with the same one we used for the master administrator. All right, so we accept the terms of agreement and we click create your account. And now this user is added to the configuration. So what's going to be different here in the experience for that individual here, right? They see that they're logged on. They see that they're at the config organization, right, which is where the account actually originated from. They would go here to child A, and this is where they would have all of their incidents. So anything that was detected and we were starting the automation process, they would see all of their information and activity there. We would be able to configure whatever dashboards we wanted for them at the higher level, create the filter down in the shared view so they would be able to see whatever information that they needed to see, right? So that's the basic installation overview of the setup here of the MSSP install. It's a rather large topic, and there's a number of other videos that would probably be produced by us in the series there. We're going to look at covering things such as, well, how do you configure a single SIM to send information from its many different domains to the many different orgs for management and things of that nature. Those topics can be a little bit more advanced, but if there's something specific that you wanted to know about or something that we missed here in this video, as always, just send us something in the comments. We are always monitoring those things, and we'll be happy to pick those up and then come back and address those for you in a future session. All right. I'd like to thank you for your time and your participation and your attention to this important topic. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.